Satnam, beautiful sovereign sisters, and welcome to this week's astrological and ancestral tarot update. And this week's energy is like no other. We're all in this very pivotal moment where we're moving through this void of either I go back to my old ways of giving away my power, or I finally face the biggest fears that have prevented me and my lineage from stepping fully into all of my power. And we're all working through this, whether you are on a healing journey or not. This week, we're talking about Mars retrograde in Leo and then in Cancer. We're going to look at how Neptune stationing direct in Pisces and this Gemini full moon on the 15th, conjunct Jupiter, is collectively bringing us all to this very pivotal crossroads where it is a time for you to ask, will you reclaim the power and wisdom that has been suppressed in your lineage, or are you going to continue to remain stuck in cycles of fear and illusion? Together, today we're going to explore the guidance from our ancestors through the tarot, how the goddess of crossroads herself, Hecate, has been working in my life and in the community of women that I serve, and how she is leading all of us right now through this very liminal space to heal the witch's wound, a wound tied to ancestral persecution and the suppression of our spiritual gifts, a story that has been told for way too long. In the end, we'll close with this week's ancestral tarot guidance to bring you even more clarity so that you can learn to better navigate this week in sovereignty with an open heart and with excitement, because there is also a lot to be excited about. This is all about sovereignty, truth, and breaking cycles. So let's get right into it. Welcome, and thank you for being here. And first and foremost, thanks for hitting that like button, that subscribe, for sharing this with other women in your community, in your life. Together, we're all growing this global movement of generational healing, reclaiming our sovereignty, and reclaiming our ancestral gifts, because when we heal ourselves, we heal our lineage, and what is left is nothing but our ancestral gifts, which many are very much afraid to step into because of the history we've had with what happens with those that decide to do so. But this week's astrological alignments are going to help you further understand what I'm talking about. So let's start with the astrology for the week. Lots of things happening this week. I'm going to focus on the three major things, and then we'll get right into the guidance that follows up really beautifully from the astrology. So this week's astrological alignments, they highlight a very profound void. This morning in my community sadhana for the Sovereign Sisterhood Academy and for Satori Vitality and Spirituality, every Monday morning, we have basically our energy update, what is happening in the week, how to prepare, how to navigate. And I was just sharing with them that for the last few weeks, the goddess Hecate, who I've never worked with before, for me, the deities or those beautiful spiritual masters that have guided my life have always been my brother Jesus Christ and the Virgen de Guadalupe, Our Lady of Guadalupe, which is why I actually tattooed her on my arm. She has always been a guiding light, a force in my life that together her and I have worked to clear some very deep generational traumatic wounds. And she has allowed me to really embody my own power as well, and as it relates to healing, not just myself, but others. But recently, I was just sharing with my community how much Hecate has been coming to me, and I didn't really know a lot about her. So I started to do a lot of research as to why she's coming to me, to work with her, to just acknowledge her presence. And Hecate is this ancient goddess of the crossroads. She's the goddess of magic, of the moon, of the unseen realms, which of course she was completely misunderstood. Just like the goddess Kali from the Hinduism tradition that sits with her tongue sticking out, doesn't necessarily look like she's a goddess, like a all love and light, like the wicked, play Glenda the Good Witch. She's very misunderstood, Kali, and that's the way Hecate is too. She, like the patriarchy is so good at doing, and like religion is so good at doing, they basically portrayed her as like this evil witch, which even the word witch is not something to be afraid of. A witch just means a woman who is connected to the natural elements, nature. I'm talking about fire, earth, water, right? That's why as women we would seek out the moon to practice our magic, our rituals. And the patriarchy, because we were once a matriarchal society, has done a really good job to make us women afraid of that power, afraid of our psychic abilities, of our healing abilities. And Hecate, now I realize, I was explaining to my community this morning why she's been coming to us, because this month, or to me, not only in December is it winter solstice, and she is represented by a torchlight that leads the way for those that are in between of an old life and a new life. But she also represents rebirth, magic, and owning our power, being able to create from the unknown and not being afraid of that. And I really feel that this week's astrology, as well as the guidance, the tarot guidance I'm going to share with you, is like we're all in this void, whether you've ever done the generational healing work or not. People have not, they have serious cognitive dissonance. They can't catch up to all of the truths. Remember that the root word of apocalypse is the word revelation. So it's not a bad or good thing. An apocalypse is all that was in the dark will be revealed. And think about all the things that have been revealed in the last just even year in 2024, the corruption in Hollywood, the corruption in the government, the corruption in the pharmaceutical industries, corruption, corruption, corruption. These people that we thought were the leaders, those that we respected, and that perhaps we thought that you wanted to even mirror your life like, toward like what they had in their life. Now we're seeing how completely false it is. And because of that, this is something that I knew for a long time. Thank God that I studied A Course in Miracles for a long time, and I've never worshipped or idolized anybody. I understand that everybody, including spiritual teachers, can absolutely abuse their power. So I've never worshipped, and none of this surprises me, because this is something that I was talking about back since 2012 and 2013 about all of these things. And back then I was called a conspiracy theorist, and I was just judged as crazy. And now everything's just coming to the light. So for me, I've already understood this. I've already worked through it. But those people that where the blindfold is coming off and they're getting all these revelations about the truth of who runs this world, it's hard for them and they don't want to face it. They don't want to deal with it. They want to just go back to their old ways where everything else was the opposite. You know, the government took care of you, the medical industry cared about you, Hollywood was a great place to watch movies. They're not willing to change their beliefs, even though the evidence is right in front of them. And like that story of Pluto's cave, Plato's cave, not Pluto the planet, Plato. There's a story about Plato's cave where it's a row of people that are chained and they're just staring at a screen programmed. And one of them finally realizes that all he has to do is take the chain off and walk away from this victimhood. And when he does that, you would think that the others would do the same. And he even tries to convince them and tell them, oh my God, look, you can unchain yourself. And if you leave from here, you go out here and there's a beautiful world. And he goes back to try to tell them, and they try to kill him. Why? Because they don't want to be bothered. This is what my life has always been. I don't want to know anything else. That's what cognitive dissonance is. And so the entire world is in this void where the cognitive dissonance has caught up, and not everyone's going to move forward with owning their power. What was Pluto in Capricorn all about from 2008 to 2016? The abuse of power in all shapes. And we saw it. We're still seeing that right now, right? So if you know that there's been abuse of power, the lesson is stop worshiping and stop idolizing and own your own power. And this is where Hecate came in really strong. And this is what I was explaining in Sadhana this morning, that she was somebody who was misunderstood. She was a witch. She was in magic. She was a beautiful goddess that represented helping even the those that were dying in war transition into the next life, right? She was the intermediary of all of that. And many of us, because this persecution of those that have gifts or were born with gifts, because all of us are either born with gifts or we can evolve them through practices like Kundalini yoga, through A Course in Miracles, right? We know this story since the Roman Empire, since back then when Jesus Christ was first born. Remember, they were looking for that North Star, looking for that star to look for him because they wanted to kill him, and they were killing all of the kids that even would be even similar to what Jesus Christ was. Why? Because Jesus Christ was a heretic who came to teach the complete opposite of what religion or even the Bible teaches, right? Because the Bible is missing a lot of different parts. The true teachings of Jesus Christ were Gnostic. And during the time when he was born, Gnosticism was spreading widely. Gnosticism says that God is inside of you. God is not in just Jesus or just the church or just the priest. That God is within you. And because this went against the Roman Empire, because of course it would not benefit them if they can't control you. Not only did they persecute Jesus Christ, but then they also persecuted the Gnostic people and they got rid of them. And in fact, they were looking for people with these chromosomes to get rid of all of them because that stood against whatever it is that they were trying to control us over. And that story is still repeating itself right now. But now here in December of 2024, we're in this pivotal crossroad where again, either you're going to continue to give your power away and you didn't learn any lessons when Pluto was in Capricorn for the last 16 years, or you're going to stop being afraid of your power. You're going to learn to channel it and use it wisely, because it doesn't matter if you have power. If you don't know how to channel it, that's a whole other problem, which how you channel things is through meditation. That's a whole other podcast that I would have to do completely episode on that. But Hecate becomes this ancient goddess of the crossroads to help you learn how to channel that energy, how to use it for your own co-creation with God, because we're never creating on our own. We become a channel for the divine. And that's what Hecate is looking for women to do. She's presenting herself to women in dreams and meditations, just like me, to remind you how not to be afraid, how to not be afraid, especially in these crossroads, because she stands at the threshold of change. She guides us through these pivotal moments. She invites us to do the shadow work in the void. She's the guardian of the underworld. And Hecate leads souls through the darkness of the subconscious, helping them confront fears. There's incredible feminine power and dealing with this witch's wound, because Hecate's energy resonates deeply with women reclaiming their spiritual power. She symbolizes the reclamation of sacred feminine. And more as we move into the age of Aquarius, we are all going to be less afraid of our psychic abilities, our healing abilities, in one part because of technology, but in the second part, because this is the second coming of Christ, the second coming of the Christ consciousness, not our brother Jesus Christ coming out of the sky and saving us. That's not what he ever came to teach. He said, whatever I did, you can do too. And that's why I explained very deeply this morning in Sadhana, not only more about Hecate, but also all the ways that we already have evidence of how we are all connected, how our nervous systems communicate with each other, and why it's always been this matrix of keeping people apart. It's like what they do in the jails, like they put all of the people of certain races separate and they all have to hang out with their own race. Why? So that they could go against each other. That's what they do now in the real world, or not in the real world, but in this physical world. The real world is love. The real world is heaven and the kingdom of heaven. But in this physical reality that we experience through our thoughts, feelings, and emotions, they do the same thing. Let's separate all the ones that believe in vaccination versus those that don't. Let's get people against each other because of their color of their skin, their religious beliefs, all of these different things. Why? So we can keep them apart from each other and separate so that we can control them easier. And now, because we're all becoming more aware of that, because there's a huge spiritual awakening that's happening, you're going to feel it even more this week after I share with you the astrology. We're all in this crossroads, in this void, in this liminal space, and you get to decide. Am I going to continue to give my power away, continue to act like a victim and think I'm a victim, and just pray that somebody comes and saves me? Or are you going to learn to channel energy? Are you going to heal the witch's wound tied to the persecution of your spiritual gifts and your ancestors' spiritual gifts? Your grandma, your great grandma, your mother, who had all these gifts, but could not be herself because she would be burned at the stake or crucified or judged or made fun of. And you wonder, those people that don't own their gifts, they suffer tremendously anyways. So you're losing not only by being a slave to a matrix that benefits from you being afraid of your power, but then you double lose because now you're living in suffering, you're not fulfilling your life purpose, and then the pattern continues so that the next lineage, or the next generation of your lineage will continue to be afraid to be themselves. Not being authentically you is a big part of trauma and generational trauma. And we're all being prepared right now for this huge rebirth, the winter solstice that's coming up here in a week, the symbolic time of death and rebirth. And Hecate's energy prepares us to shed the old patterns, the beliefs, the fears that no longer serve you. She has the torch of light to show you the way, even in the void when it gets really, really dark. And there's tremendous consequences when we don't do this. And that's why this week, as I share with you the astrology for the week, you're going to see how it all lines up with this message that I shared in the beginning here, to better understand what we're all up against and why you're feeling the way you're feeling. So I'm going to go over 3 major transits this week that are happening. First, the Mars retrograde transit that just occurred on December 6th. We're going to talk about that and how this applies to what we're talking about. We're going to look at also the full moon in Gemini with Mercury going direct. And then we're going to also look on December 7th at Neptune now finally going direct. So December 6th kicks off with a very, very poignant shift in energy. Like, you can feel it, regardless of when you're listening to this podcast. In the last episode of the YouTube, my YouTube channel, you can go find it here. I'll link it below. I went through the entire month of December. So what are all the astrological transits, the major ones that are happening in December? And let's break them down. So today I'm going to focus on this week, December. I'm going to look back to December 6th, just because we didn't talk that much in detail about this Mars retrograde, and I'm going to take it all the way to the full moon in Gemini. So the December 6th, Mars, the planet of action, drive, desire, goes retrograde and went retrograde, which is a very significant event because Mars retrograde only happens every 2 years, and it lasts for about 2 to 2.5 months. So what it's going to do is that it's going to stay retrograde from December 6th in Leo until about January 5th. And then it's going to stay retrograde, but it's going to shift signs into Cancer. And then it's going to stay retrograde in Cancer until February 23rd. And so Mars retrograde, it appears to move backwards, right, in the sky from our perspective on Earth. But this symbolically signifies a period of internalization, everything that Mars represents, which is action, ambition, energy, passion, and also conflict. When Mars goes retrograde, this external progress that you were making can absolutely slow down. And there may be a lot of temperaments that are flaring. This energy may feel even scattered or misdirected. So it's basically an incredible time to just review how we assert ourselves and to channel that energy to reevaluate our goals. Now, in the first part, Mars is going to stay retrograde in Leo until January 5th. You have to remember that Leo is ruled by the sun, and Leo is associated with creativity, with self-expression, with leadership, and your heart. It governs themes of personal confidence, of individuality, and the desire to shine and to be recognized, regardless of the scrutiny or the persecution. So Mars retrograde in this first part in Leo, there's a reflection on ego and leadership in general, where this phase is going to challenge us and our relationships as it relates to personal power and leadership. Actions driven by the ego or a need for a validation are going to be unsustainable, and they're going to show up as very counterproductive and as triggers. So this is not to punish you. This is Mars saying, hey, you're coming from the wrong place. You're coming from a place of ego. You're coming from a place of approval. Remember, that's something you healed already in Pluto in Aquarius the last 16 years. It's also going to force us to do this creative reassessment, where projects requiring the creative passion of Mars are going to face delays, revisions. Remember, we're still in Mercury retrograde too, which I'll get to. So those of you who consider yourself to be artists, creators, you're going to need to revisit all of your inspirations. Business owners, you're going to have to revisit, cross the T's, dot the I's, but all connected to this passion, to this Leo energy of boldness, of leadership. And there could be a lot of emotional volatility in Leo, because Mars in Leo amplifies a lot of pride and a need for attention. So retrograde, it's going to bring potential conflicts over recognition or even self-worth, which is going to require a lot of inner reflection. This is why I'm saying the triggers are not there to punish you. They're there to help you see what inside of you needs to still be healed, which takes us to this work, the sacred work of the inner child. Last week, we did a podcast episode with my sister Elvira. I'll link it below, on the inner child. And this is going to be a big theme throughout this time where Mars is in Leo, because Leo rules the heart and the inner child. So retrograde Mars is going to trigger suppressed frustrations from childhood or past experiences where authenticity was stifled. Basically, it was not safe for you to be authentically you. So as it moves from Leo into Cancer on January 6th, the energy changes a little, because Cancer is ruled by the moon. Cancer is a nurturing, sensitive, and intuitive sign that's connected to the home, to the family, to emotions, to security. It governs themes of belonging, of ancestry, and emotional safety. So when Mars switches to Cancer retrograde, expect a big part of you to go through this very deep journey of emotional healing. Mars retrograde in Cancer is going to direct the energy inward. It's going to urge us to confront unresolved emotional wounds and all of these familial dynamics, right? The generational stuff. That's why it's all coming to the light, because you can no longer lie. In the age of Aquarius, your energy speaks louder than words. So there could be conflict in close relationships, in intimate relationships, misunderstanding, passive aggressiveness. Be very careful with this, especially around family or domestic settings. It's really important just to approach situations with emotional maturity, not from the place of the inner child that is wounded. There's also going to be a lot of themes around protection and vulnerability, because in Cancer, Mars symbolizes this protective warrior for one's emotional core. But retrograde, it highlights these imbalances between self-protection and emotional openness. A lot of this will also mean revisiting the ancestors during its time in Cancer, because this period is going to bring a call to action to reflect on generational patterns or ancestral karma. So this comes to you sometimes in ways of dreams, in meditation, sometimes in conversations you're going to be having with the people. It's going to bring up things. That's why I said your triggers are going to be your best friends, not something to run away from, not something to feel ashamed about, not something to feel guilty. They're all pointing to something inside of you that still needs awareness or needs to be brought to the light to heal. So in a nutshell, the transition from fiery Leo to Cancer during Mars retrograde, it's basically going from ego to emotion, moving from Leo's assertiveness to Cancer sensitivity. So the focus changes from outward expression to inward reflection. And we're balancing fire and water. Challenges are probably going to arise in reconciling bold ambition, Leo, right? But also emotional sensitivity and security. That's Cancer. So in this collective consciousness, how is it showing up? Power dynamics and leadership. Political leaders, public figures may face consequences for egocentric decisions, Leo, or emotional manipulation, Cancer. I think we're seeing a lot of this already. Global emotions, the transition could actually see an increase in emotional appeals or reactions to events. Look at what's happening with the assassination of this United Healthcare CEO. People are going to become more protective. They're also going to really think about the past and maybe even have nostalgia, which can bring up a lot of emotions. Remember, Mars is fiery. So if we're going back to like protection and nostalgia, this could bring up a lot of energy of fire, of anger too. So this is a time for us to really look at the structures we build and to look at ways that we can truly use the energy of creation and passion to truly create and not to destroy. Because through this transit, Mars in retrograde, we're all going to realign with what is our true passion, what is our true fire, what is it that I'm really here to do, and all connected to your past, to your home, to your ancestry, to all of these different ways that, while introspective, will provide opportunities for profound transformation. If you are not shooting the messenger, if you are not projecting your own shadows out into the world. So we have Mars retrograde that just occurred, while at the same time on the next day, December 7th, Neptune the planet of dreams, spirituality, illusions, went direct at 27 degrees of Pisces. This happened right after this direct or retrograde movement in Mars. And this is a long retrograde period that began on July 2nd of 2024. So you can kind of look back to July 2nd and see what kind of themes and where you were working with back then. Because now as it goes direct, now this is a very significant moment, setting the stage for Neptune's transition from Pisces, its home sign, to fiery Aries on March 30th, 2025. For the first time in 165 years, you will hear me talk a lot about Neptune all of 2025. And if you thought 2020, when we had that pandemic, was crazy and nuts, 2025 is going to feel like a sci-fi movie. Literally, 2020 is going to feel like a walk in the park compared to the incredible revelations and things that are going to be exposed in all of 2025. And it's all because of Neptune. And it's not just Neptune is transitioning into Aries. It's just that there's a lot of big transits, changes of planets and signs that are going to give us a completely new beginning. The Mayans spoke about this 2025 being the beginning of time because of the way Neptune is positioned. They didn't know anything past this period. That's why, even though they talked about the golden age of consciousness, the sixth sun, the age of Aquarius, it's not guaranteed. It's up to humanity to decide how to steer the boat. Either we go through a great apocalypse again and we all we literally destroy ourselves, which is one option, or we all accept the light and the Christ consciousness within us as well as the shadows, and we all evolve into the age of Aquarius together. We're creating that reality every day by how we heal ourselves, how we learn to forgive, and how we learn to actually live in our authentic truth. And as Neptune goes direct in Pisces, you're going to feel the intuition, your spirituality, your creativity, your dreams, all of the collective unconsciousness at an even bigger level. Even if its influence is in the subtle and ethereal and very nebulous at times, what it's doing direct is it's dissolving boundaries to connect us with something greater than ourselves, God. While retrograde, Neptune was lifting the veil, right? Confronting us with harsh truths or disillusionment. Now direct, it's going to reintroduce inspiration, imagination, and connection to the mystical, especially in Pisces, because Pisces is the shaman of the astrological birth chart. So as Neptune went direct the day after Mars went retrograde, there was this powerful reconnection to our intuition, to our spirituality. There was this shift in the sign of Pisces, which it loves to hang out with, that reactivated our ability to channel divine wisdom, opening the door to the gifts of our ancestors. This is why I'm telling you that the witch's wound is so obvious right now, because now Neptune going direct, you now have had the time to access the deeper truths that have been buried. And if you practices like Kundalini yoga, meditation, A Course in Miracles, spiritual psychotherapy, which I do, that's what happens every time you regulate your nervous system at a new layer. And that's been happening for the last few months, preparing us for this very important time in space. We're healing through compassion. Neptune influences and encourages forgiveness and compassion for ourselves and for our ancestors, which was a lot of the big work that I had to do in order to disrupt some serious cycles of trauma in my lineage. So Neptune during this time is going to challenge us to discern, to continue to discern the way Mars retrograde is doing too, between egoic illusions and your actual spiritual truths, your actual spiritual gifts. The witch's wound is rooted in the illusion of separation, believing that we must hide our light to survive. Neptune going direct is helping us all dissolve this illusion and to realign us with divine unity. And there's nothing for you to be afraid of. Because yes, in the past, they persecuted Jesus Christ because he was the only one with the Christ consciousness at that time teaching us, except for the Gnostic teachers as well. The Gnostic teachers, remember, were driven out of Rome and anywhere where they would teach basically that God was inside of you. But now as Neptune is going direct, now we're all having this opportunity to really know our truth, to really understand our creativity, our heightened spiritual awareness, where it's gonna feel intensified and it's gonna pull us towards these spiritual practices of intuition, of unity consciousness. And that's something that the matrix doesn't benefit from. That's why there's so much distraction left and right, right? This happening last week, it felt like 1,000 years every week, right? And this is very crucial for you to be very present with Neptune being direct in Pisces until March 30th, because once it goes into Aries, it's going to end a 14-year journey in Pisces that emphasized the dissolution of illusions. And now in Aries, this new cycle in Aries is going to bring pioneering, bold energy, true identity, shifting your focus from introspection to action. That's why I'm telling you, the witch's wound is coming up big time. Fear mongering left and right. Why? Because they want you to suppress and to be afraid of your powers. And again, it's so obvious now how so many of us were either born with them or have basically evolved them through our own spiritual practices. So you're going to see in the collective consciousness with Neptune going direct from now until March 30th before it goes into Aries, heightened intuition and spirituality, a collective push toward mystical experiences, meditation, spiritual exploration. That's probably why you're here. Interest in non-traditional spiritual practices, psychedelics, holistic healing. That's going to surge in a huge way. But that's also because Saturn is in Pisces. And Saturn in Pisces is also relevant to this assassination of this United Healthcare CEO. Remember, I think I said it in this podcast, but this is something I've been talking to my community about since 2 years ago, when Saturn first went into Pisces, that this would be the fall of the pharmaceutical industry, the medical industry. Why? Because Saturn in Pisces, it takes us back to our ancestral ways of healing holistically, body, mind, and spirit. That's why you're seeing all the scrutiny, all the revelations of how much they keep you sick instead of trying to help you actually heal. So we're all being prepared for this Aries energy, where we're now gonna be standing in our bold truth, whether we like it or not. Because if you're not doing it, you're not standing in your truth, you're suffering and you're dying very, very quickly, which is what they want people to actually do and feel and see. And this is why the witch's wound is so real. Because if they can make you believe that you're crazy because you have psychic abilities, empathic abilities, you're able to heal others, heal yourself. If we can get her to believe she's crazy, then she will not stand in her power. Remember, though, in the age of Aquarius, it's all of us, because of the changes of also the position of the Earth to the sun. Our consciousness is expanding in huge ways, where telepathy, I mean, just the other day, they proved that you can actually speak to each other in dreams. This was a scientific experiment that they did, okay? And they've been astral projecting and interdimensionally traveling for a long time. I mean, even our ancient ancestors were doing that, but the government, the CIA, all those people, for a long time, they've been doing that. But again, even astrology, right? Like, what did JP Morgan Chase say? Millionaires don't practice astrology, only billionaires do. Billionaires. So they all practice astrology. They all practice their form of dark magic or witchcraft, but then they make you believe like it's bad or it's negative. There's a reason for that, right? So all of that is falling apart because we're all awakening in a very big way. So then after Neptune goes direct, now we have this Gemini full moon that's coming up also on the 15th. And this Gemini full moon is all about, because it is conjunct Jupiter, and Jupiter is the sign of expansion. And you have to remember that not only is there a Gemini full moon on that day, we also have Mercury finally going direct on that same day. So we have Mercury going direct, which was causing maybe fogginess, miscommunications, delays in certain things, now finally going direct. And now, because of that, we have also this Gemini full moon that brings culmination, insight. Jupiter amplifies the mental and communicative energy of Gemini. And the messages and the visions are all around your suppressed gifts that are going to surface, bringing clarity to what needs healing and what needs reclamation. That's what the Gemini full moon is all about. It's about truth and expansion. Jupiter conjunct the moon during this full moon is going to expand your emotional awareness. It's going to encourage you to embrace your soul's calling with optimism, with faith. But during this full moon in Gemini, we also have Neptune squaring, and anytime a planet or sign squares, it's uncomfortable. It's challenging. So Neptune is going to remind us that this journey requires discernment. What is real, what is not. The whole age of Aquarius is because of technology. Look at AI. So it feels uncomfortable because Jupiter's expanding your gifts, your power in Gemini, the way you communicate, the way you show up, right? But with Neptune being square during this full moon, now you're going to have to use discernment because there's a lot of information coming to you. And with Mercury going direct in Gemini, that can feel very overwhelming. That can feel like, I don't know what is true and what is not. Now, these full moons bring a culmination. So with the culmination of the full moon and Mercury stationing direct on the same day, lots of aha moments, clarity, especially to your spiritual path because Neptune is involved, and to your soul's purpose. So in Sagittarius, we're still in Sagittarius season, as well as Mercury is in Sagittarius. We've been on this quest for truth, for higher understanding. Sagittarius is the great philosopher, where we're aligning with perfectly with the need to step into the light of our truth after generation and generation and generation of ancestral suppression. So for me, this full moon in Gemini with Mercury going direct, even though it's uncomfortable with Neptune squaring the sun, it's actually about inspiration and reevaluation of the stories we've inherited about power, about safety and persecution. So this is a beautiful and full moon to rewrite the narrative, moving from fear to faith. This is about you not needing approval, not caring what other people think of you. Now, the reason why many of us care what people think of us and we can't truly step into our truth, the biological reason is because of prana. If you don't have prana moving through your system, meaning you're unconscious 90 to 95% of the day, operating from an unconscious program thought. So if we're doing that 90 to 95% of the day, you are eating up your pranic energy. Even if you get enough sleep and you wake up in the morning, you're like, why am I so tired today? I slept 10, 12 hours. Well, because your thoughts, subconscious mind are eating up your pranic field. And if your subconscious mind is eating up your prana, not only are you not intuitive or sensitive, but you're also very disconnected to your soul purpose, and you don't have enough energy to actually make the changes that are being required for you to make in this void. Because remember, we all put rockets of desire out there, right? So what happens in the time, and I say it in quotations, time, it's not real, it's an illusion, and it's only created through when we do not surrender, when we do not accept what's in front of us, within us, when we reject, whether it's an illness, a breakup, a financial situation, you not surrendering, meaning you don't have enough prana to actually trust to be in the neutral mind, is creating more time and keeping you in the same cycles. So during this time, and especially during the full moon in Gemini, it's all about surrender. It's all about acceptance. I accept my now in order to be able to move forward. You cannot reject the now and move forward thinking you're not going to have to come back and revisit it. You have to learn to honor and accept it. And that goes back to nervous system regulation, which we do through Kundalini yoga meditation and A Course in Miracles spiritual psychotherapy, brain rewiring, both done the same way as well as the relationship healed with yourself so that the relationship with God can be ultimately healed. And that's what this is all leading to. This full moon in Gemini is going to make us feel uncomfortable in order to really say yes to what is true to our heart, to our belief systems. And it's preparing us for the next 5 days because on the 21st, a few days afterwards, then we have the winter solstice. And that's a huge deal. That is a day where through meditation, you can make psychic surgery on your subconscious mind so that it stops eating up all of your prana. And I promise you that next week, I will actually do a full video episode on just the winter solstice. What are the rituals you need to be integrating? What are the things you need to start doing to actually understand how to navigate through this very, very powerful energy? So look out for for next week's podcast episode to learn more about that. So overall, we have an incredible time where we're all realigning with our true belief systems, with our true values, where everything in our life has completely changed, and we're sitting in this void now with clarity from Neptune, Mars retrograde, our passions being revisited so that we can learn to surrender, and more importantly, so we could stop being afraid of our spiritual gifts. Because once we do that, we will break the cycle for ourselves and for generations before and after us. So now that we've uncovered how this week's astrology reflects the energetic crossroads that we're facing, balancing courage, spiritual awakening, ancestral healing, it's now time to bring the wisdom of the tarot. And I'm telling you right now that just the same thing that I was talking about astrologically, the ancestors are talking to us in that same manner through the tarot. But before we get into that, if this is resonating, if you're enjoying this, please hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, share this video with other women in your communities. We are together growing this global movement for generational healing. So let's also see what our ancestors are telling us about the steps that we need to take during this very powerful week of Mars retrograde, Neptune direct, and a full moon in Gemini when Mercury is also going direct. So the guidance. So the first card that I pulled in the immediate past, so this is a 3-card spread, immediate past, present, and future, is the 7 of Swords, and it is reversed. The 7 of Swords, as you can see, I'm going to put it up right just so you could see it. There's a gentleman holding knives, and he thinks he's getting away with something. So in the immediate past reversed, you were dealing with imposter syndrome, feeling like a fraud, doubting your abilities, probably driven by fear more than the actual reality. So in the immediate past, you were being encouraged to trust in your capabilities and to move forward with confidence. There was self-deception you had to deal with, hiding truths from yourself, or maybe even ignoring situations that require confrontation. Has been a period for you to face reality and align with your authentic self. This has been a period of harboring secrets or guilt that led to a lot of emotional stress, where you had to do a lot of work on forgiving yourself and confiding maybe in someone that you actually trust so that you could liberate yourself and you could find relief. In the immediate past, you were growing very discomfort with a lot of deceit that was happening in your life, whether this was in personal actions or in relationships. There was a desire to bring integrity into the open. And think about this. I've been talking about the way our brother Jesus Christ was persecuted for being a heretic, for literally teaching the radical teachings of unconditional love, unconditional forgiveness. And the 7 of Swords in the immediate past is about confronting dishonesty, both internal and external, and stepping out of the shadows of secrecy. Think about it in the context of the persecution. What this card is speaking about is the fear of being exposed for holding beliefs or truths that challenge societal norms. Same story as Jesus Christ, same story as the way the Gnostic teachings, they got rid of them. Even in the movie Star Wars and the Jedi, Darth Vader, who went after the hunt for all the Jedi and their wisdom and the resistance to anything that was holy and that had any type of power. That's what this was. During those witch hunts, individuals were falsely accused, remember, and punished for their heresy. They hid their practices in order to survive, just the same way as the Gnostics were driven underground. Jesus Christ was crucified, forced into secrecy to avoid destruction and annihilation. So what the 7 of Swords reversed in the immediate past is all about, it's calling us for courage, to step into our truth and authenticity, even when the world has rejected or punished these truths in the past. Just like Jesus, just like the Gnostics, just like the witches and the Jedi. What this card is doing is inviting you to confront the fear, to align with integrity, and to prepare to step forward as a light bearer. Despite the risks, there are no risks. You die more every day by not speaking your truth, by not sharing of your authentic gifts. You are dying because of that. That's the number one reason. So do not fear some kind of a lash against you, connect with who is channeling through you, God. And then you will never fear again. But in the past, you were doing that. And you were dealing with a lot of imposter syndrome. And you're like, is this really who I am? How do I honor this? And how do I move forward? Well, in the immediate present, we have now the Hermit. And the Hermit is reverse. So now in the immediate present, you're coming from this time of like, I'm afraid to step in my authentic truth. The witch's wound is coming up. And now in the immediate present, there's resistance to self-reflection or spiritual growth. Maybe because you think you're too busy or you don't want to avoid the void. I've hit this void many times and I'm going to hit the void many times again, because the more that I heal my nervous system and rewire it, the more that connects me, changes my brain and what I download, it's layered. The healing journey is layered. So the more that I do that, the more awareness and consciousness I get, and the more void I hit. And when I hit the void, because life is not linear, life is cyclical. You go through cycles, right? And when I finally, there's times, where I hit that void because I've just gained so much awareness and knowledge through my nervous system that's regulated, my brain, my heart clearing, that I hit that void and things feel stagnant, like they're not moving. Like, oh my God, all that inner work I've done for me to be here again. So because I've been through that already many times when I did major healing, breaking generational curses, like I just celebrated a 27th year wedding anniversary, broke the generational curse of toxic relationships in my lineage. I also just celebrated 6 years of healing and addiction to alcohol, completely alcohol free with no cravings, thanks to God, Our Lady of Guadalupe, my mama's prayers, Jesus Christ, Kundalini yoga, for sure. That was at the forefront. And A Course in Miracles, I just broke that cycle for my lineage too. So when I broke those cycles, they didn't happen at the same time. They happened at different times as I regulated my nervous system more. So I would hit those voids. And I've been through those voids many times, but now the difference is that my nervous system is so regulated at a different point than in what it was even a year ago, that I know what the void feels like. And I know that in this void, I'm collecting wisdom and information for my journey. And I know what's to follow next, which is the light. But most people, that's where they lose themselves and they revert back to being like dogmatic, really religious people because they're so afraid of their power and they're so afraid to really face the darkness from within them. They'd rather continue to be victims in this world. Our brother Jesus Christ was not a victim. A Course in Miracles, which are the teachings of his channelings, he proves to us that he was he never felt persecuted or attacked. He was too emotionally intelligent for that. He knew he wasn't a body. And he didn't come to teach us about the crucifixion. He came to teach us about the resurrection. So be careful in the present moment right now with over isolation, spending too much time in solitude because of the energy from the past. I get it. You feel like an imposter. You feel afraid. That's why they did that to our brother Christ, Jesus Christ. They put him on a cross as an example. Oh, look what's going to happen to you if you step into your power. Again, if you don't step into your power, you're dying every day anyways. So why wouldn't you step into your power? So be very, very conscious about you not spending too much time in solitude, which can lead to disconnection from others in the outside world. It's important right now for you to seek balance, finding harmony between this inner reflection. I get it. Mars retrograde in Leo and also in Cancer. I understand that there's going to be a lot of that needed, but you got to balance that out with external engagement because Neptune's now direct too. And we got a very vibrant full moon in Gemini that is reminding you of the importance of relationships, of staying connected while working through your personal growth. So this Hermit reverse reflects the loneliness and the alienation that was experienced by those who were persecuted for their beliefs. Jesus, he spent a lot of time in isolation, 40 days, right? We meditate for 40 days to change the brain. That's what he did too, resisting the temptation to abandon his mission despite the overwhelming weight of societal rejection. He prophesies. He knew that they were going to do that to him, and he still moved forward swiftly. Even in the Gnostic teachings, the Gnostics were driven into secrecy to preserve their sacred teachings. And then the witches who survived the hunts often practiced in solitude to avoid detection. I get it. Totally get it. But what the Hermit reverse is warning you against is to staying too isolated or disconnected from others. Healing happens in community, 1,000%. Humans need community just as much as they need food and water. And even though the solitude might feel safe for you right now, it's going to lead to stagnation or disconnection. So, what you're being challenged in the present is to find the balance between, yes, deep reflection, your meditation moments, but also re engaging with the world, the masculine energy. Just as the persecuted groups had to find ways to preserve their teachings while staying connected to their communities. That's the message of the present moment. And because of that, in the immediate future, if you can truly listen to what these cards are telling you, the ancestors now are saying, you've got the Emperor energy. That is so amazing. Because in the immediate future, this is all about authority, of leadership, masculine energy, stepping into this role with confidence, offering stability and protection to those who rely on you, your communities, the people as maybe in your work setting at home, right? This is about discipline and structure, about you being encouraged to create order, breaking down problems systematically, and sticking to a clear plan to achieve success. This is also about you sharing wisdom and life experiences with others and receiving it from a mentor as well, from a teacher, a coach, spiritual teacher, right? So that you can continue to grow, but by the same token, you're sharing everything that you have learned. As a leader in this energy, you're respected for your ability to balance fairness with assertiveness. And think about it, this parallels so beautifully to the rising as a leader and not being afraid of your power and healing the witch's wound. Because the Emperor upright is embodying authority, stability, the courage to stand firm in your truth despite opposition. Isn't that what Jesus did? Despite knowing the consequences, he stepped into his role as a spiritual leader, embodying commitment to his mission. The Gnostics and the witches, even though they were persecuted, they left legacies of wisdom and healing practices that persisted throughout time. So this is all about us being reminded to step into our authority, which means God's authority. We have an authority problem as human beings. One of the things that I've had to learn through my healing journey and through A Course in Miracles is how to release that authority problem, how to have a relationship with the divine, with God, so that God can work through me. And that's what this is saying. It's like you're creating a foundation of stability and protection for yourself and others. There's nothing for you to be afraid of. This is a reminder that even through persecution, you have the power to reclaim your sovereignty and to lead with strength, with wisdom, and with fairness. Just the way our brother Jesus Christ did and the Gnostic teachers. They challenged the established norms of their time. They offered spiritual truths that threatened societal power structures. That's the emperor. So, what in summary, the three cards are telling us very clearly, and the ancestors are yelling from the rooftops, right? Is that the Seven of Swords reverse is reflecting a call to live in alignment with your truth despite any risks. That the Hermit reversed is now mirroring the isolation and the need to reconnect with your mission, while the Emperor represents the legacy as a spiritual leader that you are, who has provided a foundation of wisdom for generations to come and for past generation. So the overarching theme is pretty clear: rising from persecution into sovereignty. Your ancestors are encouraging you to confront fears of rejection, of persecution that may stem from all these generational witches' wounds. Just as Jesus, the Gnostics, the witches, and the Jedi, even in Star Wars, faced challenges to their authenticity, this ancestral reading reminds us all that we have the courage it takes to stand in our truth and to lead others, even when the path feels isolated and dangerous. This is a time for you to say yes to yourself and to say yes to God working through you. So much, so much, so much to say more on this, but I'm going to end it there because I could literally make this like a 5-hour podcast, but we have a lot to look forward to. We have so many things to get excited for. And if you're feeling completely different than that, then you can always join us in our free Facebook group community, the Sovereign Sisterhood Movement. This is a free Facebook private community where I share with you a weekly live healing session so that we can go deeper into the generational healing journey to prepare you for whenever we do open up enrollment for the Sovereign Sisterhood Academy, which is closed for enrollment right now. So check it out. I'm going to link it below and join us there. So this week is more than a turning point. It's an invitation to rewrite the story of your lineage, reclaiming the gifts and the power that have been suppressed through fear, persecution, and shame. The astrology, the guidance of Hecate, the ancestral tarot, all point to one truth. You are the sovereign keeper of your light. As we approach this winter solstice, a time of renewal, of rebirth, it's important to take this moment to honor yourself, to honor your ancestors, to heal the witch's wound, and to step boldly into your sovereign power. Thank you so much for joining me here in the Sovereign Sisterhood movement. Remember that every step you take toward healing yourself transforms your lineage and the entire world. Thank you so much for liking. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for hitting that notification bell. And please continue to share these teachings with other women so that we can grow this global movement of generational healing. Until next time, continue rising in truth, love, and sovereignty. I'll see you then.